Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Between Two Teachers. This is a place where we get to give our opinions about what's happening in the world of education, and there's a lot, and there's national news, local and statewide things that are happening. We stay in touch with and pass on to you, bring some best practices, always with the focus of the students, uh, what's best for them all around. So we're here, and my name is Consuelo Lara.
And my name is Madeline Cronenberg. And this is episode 229. We've been here quite a few years, sharing out our thoughts and wisdom on education. And we do it with a focus that we start each one of our episodes with a labor and body recognition and a land acknowledgement, which we believe is important because it does focus our work. And the labor and body recognition was drafted by Dr. Rochelle Rogers Ard for West Contra Costa Unified School District. And it is as follows. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and Brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and Brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. That is our labor and body recognition. And then we have a land recognition that we have been using as well for some time. And the land recognition is, we pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Hui Chin, which is part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karkin speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region and give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. We offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people, past and present. And we support the efforts for recognition, tribal recognition by the Muwekma people, and which you can learn much more about in the Justice for Muwekma site. So if you Google Justice for Muwekma, you'll learn that it's complicated to become recognized as a federal tribe, and the Ohlone people, the Muwekma Ohlone people, are still in the battle to receive that recognition and the benefits that they would get from it. In addition, you can learn more about them and the curriculum that is being taught and recommended as far as teaching about them if you go to the East Bay Regional Parks District website and just put in Ohlone and Ohlone curriculum. And if you go to the Contra Costa County Office of Education website, where they also have information on land acknowledgements and our tribal forefathers.
Yes, if you just go to the website page, the first page, and then click on menu, about, and keep going down, and then there's a link called a land acknowledgement. They have a map of all of the county tribes and the names of them and even how to pronounce them, the different kinds of options. So it gives you samples of land acknowledgements, and then of course lots of resources, links to different resources, and some names there of people in the office who could answer questions that you might have about it as well. So yeah, the resources are there, and it's just a very important thing for us to keep alive and to keep going. So
and they're growing, and they haven't always been there. This is not the same mission project that was there in the past. This is understanding where we are today and what the issues are today for our tribal communities.
Yeah.
And in addition, there are also classroom resources for social justice standards, and that goes to the first labor and body acknowledgement. And you can find that set of, or one of the many sets of standards, but one that's really a powerful one, by searching social justice standards at the Southern Poverty Law Center Learning for Justice page. So if you search that, you will come up with their social justice curriculum. And that is also ever changing because they have many people working on that and updating it, because it certainly is something that's fluid.
I want to share something I found on Netflix. Was a documentary called Gather, and it was about the tribe, the Navajo tribe. There's the Native American, and he went off and he became a Michelin chef. So he came back and he's been teaching, the people about their culture and their ways of eating and their food before colonization, and they even called it before the genocide. This is how we lived, and this is what we used, and this is how we survived. And it's fascinating. And he took a abandoned gas station and he turned it into a restaurant. And it's really great. You should watch it.
I love it. Well, all right. This is it's our first new part of Between Two Teachers, our movie recommendations, our Netflix recommendations. So I'll post it. I'll post it on our Facebook page. So and I will watch it. That's an important thing to watch. Okay. So we also ask you to subscribe and like our channel, and let us know if you have any suggestions or information to share with us. Okay, I will start with a couple of things, and there's a lot of news for us this week. So I'm going to briefly go over some budget information. So this is really the budget season. Today is July 1st. Last night was the end of everybody's fiscal year. Everybody who needed to do a budget, that this is the moment. And there are best practices and there are issues around budgets. The one best practice I wanted to call out is that in New York City, which has, the largest school district in the school system in the United States, one of the things that they have now done is created an online tool to break down the budget for each of their many schools, so that the public can go in and find out how each school is funded. And honestly, that's what members of the public, what parents want to do. They don't really want to understand all these other parts of the system that don't impact their child. They want to know what impacts their child. So I think they did a great job with how they finally put this together, because there's a lot of clarity, and you can honestly see how much money each school site is getting and what they're getting it for. And it's not, all you have to do basically is go to this one website and put in the name of the school, and it comes right up. So that's the kind of thing that we can try to model in other locations. I know Oakland had something similar at one time. I'm not even sure if it's still there, but most districts don't have it. And that might be the kind of thing that when we talk about technical support that counties are famous for giving, that maybe the counties could come together and come up with a program that would just allow every parent to be able to go to their district's website, put their school's name in, and get the budget for that school and how that school is operating.
Well, yeah, and then our Title I schools, where you have school site councils, and I go to the one for Richmond High School, we get exactly that. That it has to do with management too, the kind of governance that you have. Some people do it differently, but
right.
There are leaders who show you everything, full transparency. And we do see that. We see how every bit of money is spent. So yeah, it's possible to do that. That's
It's possible to do. The numbers are there. It's not like they're not there. But what happens is they get processed and presented in ways that are not clear. And
yeah,
what this is about is finding an easy way so that every school is presented the same way. And you even get, you get down to how much is invested in each of the children in that school and how is that investment spread out.
yes,
That's the point. But anyway, so there's that. And in keeping with that, the big news in our world here in West Contra Costa has been about exactly that. It's been about the budget. Let me turn that off. Get it, because usually she doesn't call at all, but she decided to check in because she changed her schedule. Anyway. Okay, now if I do a cancel, it'll just pick up. Let's see if that works. Yeah,
okay.
we continue recording. So as I was saying, there are many, many things happening around budgets. And one of the things that happens in West Contra Costa is that the school district the other night had a meeting where they would normally accept the budget, and they did not. And that has created a lot of news, because this is the first time, certainly in Contra Costa County and maybe in the state, with a couple of exceptions. I know Orange County had that lawsuit between the board and the superintendent when they didn't accept their budget. But I think it's maybe one of the first times for a district. And what actually happens is this: when the budget is submitted, it's submitted in prior to its submission and adoption, there's a document that is submitted first, which is called the LCAP, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan. And that plan lays out how the funding for students is allocated. Excuse me. And there's the format for the plan, and there are also major questions. The point of that plan is to say, this is the money that we have. These are the programs we've used it in. These are the students it's been used for. This is how successful those programs have been, and this is what we're going to do next with the new money that's coming in. All of those metrics were not evident in the plan that was shown to the board. And one of the board members was not present, 4 members were, and out of the 4 members who were present, only 1 voted to adopt the LCAP, which then would allow them to adopt the budget. The other 3, 2 of them voted against it and 1 abstained. Therefore, it was not accepted, and they could not then do the budget, accept the budget. So they don't have a budget. And now the county has to handle the budget. And that is, the county then gets to impose a budget from the past, or help them adopt a new budget, or they can have a new LCAP drafted and accepted.
Yeah.
And the big, right? And so the big thing with this is that they were not without county expertise.
Yeah, they had a county representative there. What was her name?
Javetta Cleveland, Miss Cleveland.
Cleveland, because I got some text during the meeting of frantic parents. So, because I'm on the county board, you would think I would know at least something about these process of how the county deals with budgets in our areas. But we are kept out of the loop on that. But I'm going to request that kind of information. We need to know, what is the process? How is the technical advice given to our districts that we represent, and whose parents are going to call us, community is going to call us to ask. So I'm going to ask for that information so that I can answer these questions. And maybe even attend these meetings if I know about them, so that there does need to be more clarification in that. And, equity is a big issue. How do you do it with certain districts and other districts? Let's look at those equity issues as well. But to me, the bottom line has always been transparency.
Yeah.
If you, like I always talk about school site council at Richmond High, I mean, it's down to the point that we are looking at the budget, the Title I budget, and a parent can say, what is that? What are you, what are you spending there? Why don't you take that money? Where you can get down to specifics and the parents know how the money's being spent and how little there is and how we have to, take from one area, put it in another. And so that's the kind of involvement that parents want. They
Mhm.
want to be a partner in this because this is their kids. So they should, so when it's not,
And that involvement is required. That's why there's a committee, a district parent committee, that's required to be a partner with the district. And the real issue here was that the district wasn't partnering with them in a transparent way, so that otherwise the numbers and the presentation would have been complete, but it was incomplete. And in addition to that, not only did the parents think that, but the local public advocates, which is a local watchdog of civil rights attorneys, who were aware of the fact that this was incomplete. It did not explain how all of the funds were being allocated and measured, how their success was being measured for the children who earned those funds. Right, in California, we're able to we have additional funds given to children who are in groups that are that need more support, and that those funds, we need to say how they're being spent on those children, and that was missing.
Yes, absolutely. And thank goodness for public advocates. And we'll kind of post, did they have a document that they had that?
Yeah, they also spoken in closed and unclosed in public session. There's been many articles written now about this, but it really comes down to the board doing what they needed to do, because what they needed to do was finally say, look, this is incomplete. And it was given to us in such a time that it literally was the next thing on the agenda was the budget. There was no opportunity for them to have reasonable input. All they could do was, what they were asked to do was rubber stamp it. And that makes no sense. I mean, that doesn't give them the opportunities that they deserve. And this was something that parents had been talking to board members about, and the superintendent. They knew, right? This was something that had been the subject of a number of meetings. So now what happens is that they're going to need to revisit it and make it clearer
Yes,
and more complete.
make some changes.
And I think maybe the format itself could be improved if it had some pages that just asked the specific kinds of questions that we're talking about here. Just the overall, how much are we talking about? How was it spent? What were the things that worked? What were the things that didn't work? And how specifically are you spending money on and resources on these students? And how are you measuring their success?
Yeah. I mean, the data that's aggregated by our most vulnerable kids, that's our star. That's what we work for and towards, the achievement of and success of those kids. And if you don't even have that, there's not, or if it's not included, that part of, then we don't know. We don't know if we're succeeding or not. But it occurs to me, maybe public advocates, it is a nonprofit, right? And it looks at different issues in education. I wonder if they could put a focus on the county in terms of what does the county do with budgets? What's the process? And, I mean, I'm as interested in whether it's equitable, what happens to between,
Right.
It's 18.
Well, I'm interested. One of the things that surprised me was that the county expert was so determined to have them adopt it, as opposed to let's talk about the issues with it, right? That if you're there to give to be the expert on how this document is supposed to, she was an expert on the fact that there's no question if you don't adopt the document, you can't adopt the budget. But she wasn't really addressing the problems with the document.
Yes, yes. So there's not really much technical advice. It's more like, punishment. It's more like threats. That's all you get from the county.
Right.
Oh, we're
And
gonna
that's
do
why a board member said, I'm being held hostage.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way it does. It does feel.
That's what she felt. And you can see why, because she wasn't being given the chance to really have that report be complete so that community members could know how the money was being spent and could know which programs are working and which ones aren't, because that's where it gets, nobody's accusing anybody here of fraud or abuse, but they are saying it's unclear. The communication is not transparent and clear. That's the issue that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And
Right.
this process from the county, it's just
Right.
not useful. It's not useful. We're
It
the
is, and the downside, the big downside now is that there are, because they don't have a budget, there are things they can't do. They have to revert to a previous budget, and they're not able to bring in new programs and move ahead with the kind of hiring that they had expected to move ahead with. Right, and they had just presumed it would be passed.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that just tells you we gotta always prepare for the worst case scenario, plan B. Okay, so what if it doesn't pass? I mean, you can't just, yeah. So these changes have to be made. We're gonna meet again next week, right? We'll let you go.
Right. We'll see where we are next week. Hopefully there will be movement on this between now and then. And we will let you know. But the big news is that what needs to come out of this is a better understanding of a clearer way to communicate program success and issues that need to be changed.
Yeah.
That they think they have that with the LCAP, but they don't. And certainly, this is an example of not having it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you wanted to share with us about.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about our board meetings and our agenda. One of the things that happened, there were 3 meetings, February, March, and April, were meetings where teachers came. It was during negotiations, and they came and talked about what's happening at their schools and what their situation is like, and they, at each one of those meetings, they talked for like almost an hour with their stories, and those stories are very important. Some were about their family, some were about this. I'll never forget. A teacher said she comes every day to work wondering, I wonder if I'll get hit today. I mean, there's just things that happen that, these are teachers like you had said, they're on the front lines. They are taking care of our most vulnerable children who have the most, difficult challenges that they have to deal with in their lives. And we've got these amazing caregivers who love their jobs, don't want to go anywhere, and they are they're just wonderful, and they're not given any voice. I've asked this for the last 4 years. So where is the teacher voice? Oh, we have a representative on it. Who knows? It's the same person all the time. I don't know. But I don't see a lot of teacher voice. So then when they came and spoke, I realized they don't have any voice. So one of the things I wanted to do was to institute a point on the agenda, and many districts do this, where the employee organizations may speak. And it's their standing there. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean, it's their choice, but they have a spot for their voice to be heard and where they can address the board on anything they want. Well, I brought that. I've been trying for the last 3 months to put that on the agenda, and there's a lot of pushback. well, and it's just nitpicky things. Well, maybe they don't even want it. Did they ask you? And I said, yes. So then they said, oh, well, they didn't ask me and they didn't ask the superintendent. What's the superintendent got to do with it? It's supposed to be our agenda. This is where the board gets obstructed constantly on what the board is supposed to do. Just be, whether it's keeping back information or just not being invited to those places where decisions are being made that we're in charge of. So anyway, so I'm trying to get that on there. Another thing was that, well, no other county does it. Okay, how about we be leaders and not followers? Let's be
Right.
the ones who do it first and right, and then others can follow. Because this is the right thing to do. It is the right. And what's interesting are two, I could see our two student board members listening intently, and they abstained. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. We should hear from them before we hear from anybody. Because sometimes I think, oh boy, our young people will know better. But so that's what I'm struggling for to get.
And that's not to, this is the thing people need to understand. In a variety of settings, one of the things about the district sometimes is that the district is the employer of and negotiates with the labor units. But that's not why they have them speak. That they don't speak about what's happening in negotiations. They come to speak because they are sharing what's happening on the front lines in their classrooms. They are reporting to you what's going on in your organization. It's not about negotiations. Nobody takes the negotiating table to the boardroom. That's not where it doesn't belong in public, and they all know that. So the reason when you decide that I'm going to decline to hear from them, right, or they just have to line up like everybody else, it really is dismissive of them, right? Because meanwhile, you're hearing from all these other people who are able to access the board meetings.
Yes.
And that's really the issue. So the administrators are able to do whatever they want, but the staff people are not.
Yeah, one of the things that, and this came from several of the board members, well, they could come to public comment. That's insulting. They are not the public, they're staff. They are part of, just like the cabinet, and even more so because they're out in the field and we need to hear from them. And so they're not the public. We're the public, if anybody's public.
You're the public because you're the elected members of the public. Board members are the elected members of the public.
The public. No, they don't go to public comment. So so and one of the board members just was reading line for line of this policy and was it's not within our jurisdiction to, and I said, wait, the agenda is all of our jurisdiction. That's totally what we are in charge of. So my recommendation is bring that policy to the board. We need to change it. It needs to, that policy promotes exclusion in any way, it's wrong. We got to look at it with diversity, equity, and
sometimes it's just how you interpret the policy. Because this is this whole idea of board business. What is board business? Well, what goes on in each of your classrooms would be board business.
Yeah.
Right. And hearing from the people in those classrooms would be board business.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't need to assume that their report is in some way going to go beyond what is appropriate for them to say.
Yeah.
It's what it's going to do is it's going to inform you and inform your judgments that you're going to make on the issues you're going to make judgments on. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All the information, again, transparency. So so that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. I'm fighting about. And then our IDTs, I have to say that our IDTs, interdistrict transfers, when a parent wants their child to go from one district to another district, it's usually having to do with work and childcare, family issues, and the district can deny releasing that student, and if they don't deny it, the receiving district can deny them entrance by saying they don't have enough room, etc. And so I've always asked why why don't you have enough room? Where, you're growing, it's usually those, like I said, in the east. So, what are you doing about that anyway? And so when they get together, these before the IDTs and prepare before coming to the board, they're informed that you're going to be asked why. We're not going to rubber stamp these things just on the side of the districts, just because we had to keep the students and their education front and center. That's what we're doing. So we all have to, what it brings to mind, that book, Unreasonable Hospitality.
Right.
What are you doing to keep these students, and what are you doing to welcome these students? Not the other way around. How can you better serve them so they don't want to leave? And how can you serve new people that are coming in? There should be no
Exactly.
blocks for any of this. This is about a parent's decision about her child. So anyway, it's getting better. It's getting better. I have to say, I am seeing some hope there.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing is, we do have, there's been declining enrollment everywhere, and there's a decrease in population. There's all kinds of things. So one of the big charges that we have is the charter school oversight, and we're going to have some schools struggling. And one school used to be 700, and now it's down to 300, and we're looking at not so good academics and the budget, and so we got to look at the issue of revocation and what does that mean. To me, that's a red light, because it means closing a school, and I just know how painful and traumatic closing a school is. And I just want to make sure these children, whether they stay or go or whatever happens, they have a soft landing. So we're going to talk more about revocation of charter schools and what are some best practices for that, because there are some definitely.
There definitely are, and they follow in the best practices that are now being developed across the country, because the declining birth rate nationally has caused districts everywhere to have to grapple with how they're going to reassess their property, right, where their buildings and who's in those buildings, and realign their resources. And they're all using terms, like all sorts of different terms to describe it. But there are best practices that are being developed, and we're going to be able to look at that in addition to the best practices that exist around oversight, charter
Oversight. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's for next time. We want to thank you for your attention. My big shout out here is to the parents who were dedicated to their kids and brought the issues around their LCAP to the board meetings, right? They spent the time to understand the documents and understand that they really did need to be improved, and they advocated. And there is nothing more important than advocating for your kids.
Absolutely. We promote that.
Yes. So 3 cheers for all of them and the good work that they did. And this will work itself out, because it will. Everyone's going to have to come to an agreement. And at the end, the documents will be better. And just as has happened when other people bring up an issue, people are now going to be much more informed and realize that these are really important issues that were worth discussing and making decisions about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So till next time.
Great.
I'm going to teachers.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.